Welcome to the Christians in Action podcast, where I get to talk to the writers who are writing your next favorite Christian men's fiction. My name is Don Matthews. I'm the author of Subverted, the Burke Runner series, and you can get that at my website, donmatthewsbooks.com, and that's Matthews with one T. Book 2 is coming out hopefully in January. Today, I'm talking to Andrew Huff. Andrew is an author and a filmmaker. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. So you're like, I think my fourth or fifth guest talker, whatever we want to call it. And I always start with two important questions. First one is, because you're an author, you've written Christian's fiction is more like a suspense thriller. Andrew, is the main character in your book. What is your daily driver, SUV or truck? Because all the thrillers have some kind of jacked up vehicle. Okay. What are you driving in your thriller?
If it's about me?
Well, you're the main character in your book. The main character.
Yeah.
What would you choose?
It's probably a classic black Jeep Wrangler.
Okay.
And that only is because that was my favorite car that a childhood hero of mine drove, MacGyver. If you ever watched the original
of course,
series. And he drove a black Jeep Wrangler through some of the series. He had a couple.
When you say classic, how far back do you talking back to the CJs? Or
like 80s probably era.
Yeah, so
right?
Like a CJ 5 or 7. Yep. I do have a Wrangler TJ, which I think it was the end of that series. Love it. We've taken a couple trails and it's so much fun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So that would be, I've always joked that would be my midlife crisis car. Most guys would get, more of a sports car.
Happened. That's what happened.
But that's what I would get. Yeah.
The
more rugged, the better.
Right. The only problem is you're not running away from anybody with a Jeep because you get too fast. It's wobbly. It's a big brick. Like we have a bridge that I go over, and when it's a windy days, I'm white knuckling over that bridge because I'm just. So, question number 2.
Let me throw in a secondary car, by the way.
Yeah.
And again, it is revealing my love for sort of the 80s era.
I'm going to guess Ferrari 308.
No,
Tom
actually, I think it's the Dodge Challenger. Is that the brand that the General Lee was in the Dukes of Hazzard? What is it? Was it a Challenger? Was it a late 70s Challenger, 77, 78?
I know what you're talking about, and
I think it's the Challenger from that era.
I don't know enough about that. It probably is. I don't think it's a Charger.
Not a Charger. No. I think it was called a Challenger. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
That's if we need a muscle car getaway car, that's probably.
Oh yeah. Mine would be the Ferrari 308. That. Yeah. So question 2, Die Hard. Is it a Christmas movie?
Ooh, I'm a contrarian often. I'm a middle child out of 3 brothers, so I'm very much a contrarian, and so I enjoy being on the side of Die Hard as a Christmas movie debate. I like saying yes on that side of the debate because it is such a heated debate, so I enjoy being on the yes side just simply to be the contrarian, even though my filmmaking, logically I could say, no, it's not a Christmas movie, right? Because
it was released in June or July.
Yeah. And it's set at Christmas, but it's obviously when you say Christmas movie, it's set during the holidays. The holidays are the point of the movie.
Right. It's not, it's a Wonderful Life.
Right, exactly. So, but the middle child in me is I love, saying
so
yes. So
that's a yes. So we'll put you down for a yes.
That's all right.
Yeah. So I became aware of you a few years ago because you were writing books that I wanted to write, and I may have already started working on my book when those had released. and I hadn't seen a whole lot about them. It's called the Shepherd Suspense Series.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like your because there's 3 in it.
Right. So I ended up writing a trilogy. I'll give you kind of the summary, but a little bit of background. And I don't know if this opens a can of worms from our conversation or whatever, but
no,
I got into fiction writing because when I was younger, I actually had considered pursuing filmmaking. I mean, like, I was actually trying to go into filmmaking, and in particular, I'm very big in computers and leveraging computers to tell stories and create media and all that kind of thing. And so, so I was looking at, I thought I would become a computer animator is what I kind of thought I was going to, the direction I was going to go. And I ended up being called into the ministry instead. Had a lot of doors shutting in terms of me going into that space. And so felt called to the ministry. And so had gotten married, was getting, was going into seminary, preparing to go into ministry. And, but I still was a creative guy, still wanted to tell stories. And it's so funny the way I kind of tell the story. This was back in 2005. And kind of, I was like, sitting there thinking, I couldn't make my own movie on the side. That's ridiculous. Who could do that?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I have a word processor and a computer and time, and it's just me. I could probably write a book. And so it'd probably be easier for me to publish a book than it would be for me to go make my own movie. In retrospect, it probably would have been easier for me to make my own movie.
That's interesting. Yeah, it is hard. And at that point, there wasn't, indie publishing probably wasn't as big of a thing. Right, I want to say like 2010 is when the Kindle came out. And then
I would probably, I know a ton of people who actually prefer now indie publishing over the traditional route.
Yeah, I do. I know there are a couple really great writers that's what they do. Mm-hmm. It has its own, like you said, can of worms. You're responsible for everything. You've got to get the edits and you have to get the cover and all that good stuff. But
I was committed to doing it traditionally. I was like, I needed to. I didn't have the time, honestly, to dive deep into it in an indie space, and so it took 10 years to get to the Shepherd Suspense series, and kind of in that process, published, I guess is what I should say. And in that process, the thing I would say is I started diving into the Christian fiction space because I was like big fan of like guys like Clive Cussler and love the Robert Ludlum's Firstborn Identity. It might be one of my favorite books. Matthew Riley is an Australian author that wrote books that I really enjoyed. I was probably the best example to give is I think Dane Brown is actually a really good writer, and I think his books are super interesting. It's just one of the reasons why I started kind of going down this route is he very clearly has an axe to grind against the church, and I just was like, man, I really want to read a good writer who's writing a fun story that doesn't kind of feel like he hates me, So.
Right. Yeah. Because his first couple books, was it Digital Fortress, something like that, was very good, and it didn't have that slant. But I almost feel like he needed that slant in order to really take off.
It could be.
It's easier to bash the church than it is to come out for it. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Especially in the general market space, Well, and that's what's so funny is you can kind of point to Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, as like, I mean, it's set in that world, right? And yet, one of that I really, really liked was The Lost Symbol, which was a sort of a Mason, Messianic, Freemasons and DC. And it really well done, really, really interesting, really. But it's not a book you think will go that direction, and it does. It's just like,
it's so frustrating. I don't think I've ever read it. So
yeah, it's kind of right at the very end, like it starts taking that turn, and it's just like, oh man. So I was like, man, I really want to write a book that's like for guys like me. And so I started, the first book that I wrote was more of like an Indiana Jones style, like archaeological adventure kind of thing.
Yep.
And started going into, and it was very strongly masculine, and started going into these Christian fiction spaces, like conferences and things like that, pitching, a book for men, and almost got laughed out of the industry for it, because the traditional Christian fiction industry is not open to something that's so strongly focused towards men. And so so I was kind of like not willing to give up at that point, and I was like, okay, well, let me write something else. And so, I'm a big Mission Impossible fan, James Bond and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, let me write something that takes everything I've learned in terms of what is marketable in the industry, but sort of do a little bit of a, it's almost like a reverse bait and switch kind of thing. Because I think sometimes in film, on the film side, there's a lot of more modern films that will kind of do a bait and switch, where they'll, especially like these remakes and stuff, where they'll be like, oh, it's this remake or this sequel that's like this movie you love, but then you go to it and they baited you with the nostalgia, only to then throw like, a female hero at you or something like that.
Totally. And I can see their point to a degree, where you do something different, but the people that are going to see it aren't going to see something different.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they're going for the nostalgia of it, and and
exactly, kind of want to see the same,
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I did is the bait and switch I did is the first book starts from the female character's perspective, and yet the book is about the male hero, is really ultimately what it's about. And so I wrote that book, pitched it, and honestly, it was the Lord that just put me in the right place at the right time. It had nothing to do with me, just pitching it necessarily and living in that space. I actually had sort of started to shelve the project when it got picked up. Okay. And so it was traditionally published by Kriegel Publications out of Grand Rapids. And essentially what happened there is they had some upper management retire, and some new management come in, and they decided to double their fiction line. And so they were like, what do we got? And my proposal for my book had been left open in their system, so they hadn't decided to pass on it or not. So it was just sitting there, and an editor found it and read it and was like, hey, I actually really like this, and advocated for me, and we were off to the races. Then it's so funny how this works, right? Once they read the entirety of the book, they came back and they were like, oh yeah, we really like this, actually, can you do more?
and it's funny because you could see how it's totally a God thing, because if it was just sitting there, like, obviously somebody had at least taken an interest in it, or had been at least willing to look at it. Right. And then once they really dug into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dug into it. And I think so much of, not that we're getting into this yet, but I think so much of the challenge when it comes to writing, now, obviously this is more in the traditional space. In the indie space, it's not necessarily as difficult, I think. But it's almost, so much of it is convincing people convincing anybody that you're legitimate. And by legitimate, it just simply means, hey, I understand how to write. I wrote a book. Right. It's done. It's there. It's full. It's like, so much of it is just convincing people to take that and to sort of dig into it, and go, oh, okay, yeah, like he actually wrote a book. And almost convincing them that I actually did it.
I've realized more and more that, and it may be my age, I don't care for gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. Just because it may not be their thing, but there could be an audience out there. So that's why I like the indie route, just because you don't have to answer to anybody other than people reading your books. You better deliver a good book, you know. So before we move on, you did 3, you did a trilogy. Are you going to do any more? Do you plan on doing? So,
that's an interesting
one
question.
Or a different series?
On that note, when they were like, hey, can you turn this into a series? The advice I always, or the joke I always make with other authors is, doesn't matter if you were planning that or not, you always say yes, So I was like, oh, of course,
absolutely. Whatever you need, whatever you want.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that from conferences and just being in the industry for a while that can happen, and so I kind of already started thinking about what I would do there.
Yeah.
And I actually think, in terms of the trilogy I made or wrote, I mean, it helps when you read the first two, obviously, to read the third. But I think with mine, I think people are pleasantly surprised with like how strong the series ends. This first trilogy, ended. And so Kriegel was like, had contracted me to do a spinoff. And so I teed up the spinoff in the third book, and was in the middle of writing the first of a new trilogy that was a spinoff in the same sort of universe. And to be honest with you, I mean, like, there was a combination of things happening there. I mean, my book series sort of stumbled in COVID like everybody else's did, started to recover, but it just wasn't enough. But I think it was just industry wide. And so I was a victim of that, in terms of my spinoff series getting canceled. But then uh, overall, it wasn't just me, it was Kriegel deciding they weren't actually going to do as much fiction as they had planned.
Yeah.
I'm not even entirely certain. I'm sure they are doing some, but I imagine it's very little in comparison to what they were doing.
Would you
now.
be able to? Did you sell them the rights? Like, is that something that you could either do on your own, or
I'd have to go back and look. I think I could do the spinoff series on my own. At the same time that was happening was where we were also making the pivot for my wife and I to start our media production company and like start trying to sort of look at all different types of media. So I'm answering your question in a long way to say John Cross is not done. The Shepherd Suspense Series is not done. It could live on in this spinoff series that I had started, that I may go back to. A big part of what we see the John Cross franchise, like, we see that as potential in other formats, right? Like, I think it'd make an excellent movie series, and so we've got that in our back pocket. We've got a spinoff series in our back pocket. These are all things that, like, I think we'd come around to eventually. But one of the things I'm also trying to figure out is like what I'm personally working on and working towards. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you as an example, like, with our movie that we just released, Doc Connor, which is more kids, books have always been a part of, hey, we want to make that a part of that franchise as well. And there was definitely like there was a little bit of like debate on whether or not I sit down and write the books, because I'm a book writer, right? It's different. It's a little bit different. Middle grade fiction, obviously, is a little bit different from writing adult fiction, and so ultimately we decided to bring in another writer to do that. And and I I'm not necessarily saying that any additional John Cross books or books within that world wouldn't come from somebody else, as much as to say I think what I end up doing, I think fiction can be a part of that, and I think whether that's myself personally or others, in terms of continually writing fiction and kind of like putting more books out there, it may be a little bit more down the road for me personally, only as we are now, really focused on getting film production and television production going. So
are you thinking that if you do those books, the Doc Connor or more John Cross, that would be under the umbrella of Huff Media?
Yeah,
like
I think so. Yeah, because and that's the advice I'm getting from a lot of different people, and a lot of the things we're seeing on the film side, but I think it's true on the indie side, on the fiction side as well, is controlling IP, being able to manage the marketing yourself. So much of it is just, you're just going to be able to do it better yourself and get it directly to the audience you're trying to seek. That I think more and more that'll be what happens, is our company will just be the company that manages that all together, and not necessarily selling IP out to other, publishers and things like that.
And you're controlling your image, your message, and so the reason I started the podcast was, so I don't really, I like talking to you. I don't like doing this. Like I do not, I am not a person who likes to put himself out there, but I felt I've been tumbling around with this idea for a little bit. And then after the whole Charlie Kirk thing, I was like,
Mm,
I need to just get out there because there are a lot of men and a couple women who are writing great fiction that
mm-hmm,
men will enjoy. So,
mm-hmm.
and whether it's my book, your book, or anyone else's in that space, I want to see Christian men's fiction dominate like the Christian women's fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and even bigger than that in the secular genres. Like I want to see. This is gonna sound awful, but I want to see domination. Like I want us to
Oh yeah.
be in that arena fighting for
Mm-hmm.
Christ.
Yeah.
And you're not just doing that like for your books though. Like you said you did a little TV series. They're like 5 minute episodes or something like that, 5-10
Mm-hmm.
minutes of Doc Connor, web detective. They were awesome.
No, thank
So,
you.
and you just got done releasing, just wrapped, I guess you wrapped up, right? Like it's no longer in the
Yeah. Yeah,
theaters.
it's not in theaters anymore. Yeah.
What, and so that's geared towards young girls, which I feel like are totally under attack right now. Like they need
Mm-hmm.
to have, just like men and boys were under attack a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
girls are being attacked now, and they need to have that place to go where they're not having something terrible shoved down their throats. And that's what you did
Mm-hmm.
with Doc Connor. Ex- Tell us a little about Doc Connor and
Yeah.
how you got to her, that character, and
Yeah.
script all the way to release and where we are now.
Well, and so much of it is tied to exactly what you're saying because I don't think it's just the fiction world that I've kind of grown weary of sort of the institutionalization of entertainment and media and storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm looking at it going, okay, you know, we don't need to play in play by their rules anymore. We need to like build new and overtake them, right? I mean, I'm right there with you in terms
Good.
of that with like Christian men's fiction and everything. And we saw that on the entertainment side as well, and in particular kids media. I mean, we got into this space because I was working in a Christian media company. I'd released my books. We were starting to dabble in in some streaming stuff with the company I was at, and they were looking for us to anybody to develop original content. And so I kind of already had Doc Connor as a character I was working on and stuff like that. But my wife and I also at the same time started to see the homosexual agenda that was coming into kids shows in the general market that just blew our minds in terms of the
Yeah.
shows that were adopting that mentality that you would have never been like, just never in a million years would have thought would have happened, right? And so for us, we were just sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, like this, the veil's lifted. There's this dark, this
Yep.
darkness that was there. I mean, honestly, in entertainment for a long time,
It's just not
but
disguised anymore.
not disguised anymore, right?" And so we just were like, "Man, we can't sit idly by, and let that happen." And so the company I was working with was trying to develop like a streaming platform and stuff. Didn't really, that initiative kind of died. And
Mm-hmm.
but we had an opportunity to sort of retain the rights to Doc Connor and continue development. And we just had enough momentum that we were like, yeah, let's finish the episodic. And we had 8 episodes of that show, and it was more edutainment focused on teaching kids biblical doctrine, but in a way that like they could grasp it, because that's another thing. We were kind of combining like our love of media and my love of like mysteries, and
Yeah.
and all that suspense, combining that with also something that we just feel personally, which is the Bible is incredibly rich, and Christianity is incredibly rich and deep, and there's so much to know and that God has revealed. And I just think I think this is just true, and it's to me it's just ridiculous that we even have this, that it almost feels like a debate. But like we just always felt like when it came to kids, people like didn't think kids could really go that deep
It was off
in
limits.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
just like it frustrates me because I'm like, no, I mean, I think kids can go deep. I think they can engage with some of these doctrinal ideas, and so we were like, well, let's try it. Let's play around with, can we introduce kids to a topic like hermeneutics? Can I, which is
Yeah.
just essentially like how, when you're reading the Bible, how do you read it? Like
Yeah.
can you understand what it's saying? It's like, let's take that and let's make it digestible for kids, and talk about things like sanctification and make it digestible for kids.
Yeah.
And not like toddler age, but like elementary age. And so that was the series, and had a lot of success with that. Not necessarily financially, but more so from the response,
Yep.
from families and stuff like that. The financial piece of it is what made us pivot over to a movie, is because what we're trying to do is figure out how to create media. And I think this is true in the fiction indie space too. It's why a lot of authors are going into the indie side of things. We went completely indie with our film
Yeah. You
because
did what's not fundraising,
crowdfunding. Yep.
crowdfunding. Yeah.
Private investment, crowdfunding,
Yep.
some donation stuff, not going with a traditional studio model because uh, the the world that the world of entertainment and media in general has been so captured in such a way that like creators don't benefit from that. They're very much on the last person to
The back.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, to sort of be compensated for it. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to determine the right formula for an independent studio to be profitable. Because I know some Christian media companies will sometimes go nonprofit because then you can raise development capital and not worry about bringing a return on that. But we always felt like, no, like we actually want it to be profitable. Like we're actually trying to grow a business. We're trying to make money for
Right.
people, not just for ourselves, but
It's a
anybody that
living. It's a
supports
living.
us. Yeah. And so we just looked at streaming episodic, which wasn't very profitable, and decided, hey, let's try our hand at a movie, theatrical release movie, which wasn't profitable either. But I think it takes time to build towards that. I think there's still viability there. I think there's, and with any kind of media production, I mean, theatrical is not the only thing that we're looking at that like is going to make the film
Right.
profitable, right? So, but the whole journey for us has been this multi-legged thing of saying, we think we need to build something new. We need to build a new institutions and dominate in a space that has been so captured by Hollywood for so long,
Yeah.
and that Christians are reluctant to sort of challenge Hollywood on. And that's family entertainment, like uh, true family entertainment. And here's what I mean by that is, we were seeing a lot of Christian films that were being promoted as family films, which weren't family films at all. Because like, we're not going to take our 11-year-old to go see a drama, about addiction, or something. So
Right. It's hard because, and I don't mean that there's a litmus test, but there are people who could be in the entertainment business and they become Christians, but then like they haven't really fully absorbed all that God has. Like
right,
there's more to it than just saying I believe Christ is real. Like you have to take up your cross every day. Like
right,
it's almost more difficult once you accept Christ.
yeah.
You know.
And with I personally believe too that it's harder to make entertaining stories for families without a family of your own as well. And we see that often with
I would agree. Yeah.
Hollywood, is sometimes family movies are being made by people who either don't have families at all, or what I mean is either they're single, or they
Yeah.
might be married but they're not having kids. And so it's like, man, when you have kids and you have a family and you're like living that
Well,
life, you understand the world differently, and
it's
then
similar
that's reflected in
to
the stories.
being a Christian, and like I had said, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Noah, was it Noah that was directed by an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why would you do that?
Right.
Yeah. That blew my mind. I never watched it. Like, I refuse to watch things like that. I may be closed-minded, but I'm not going to. The one thing I have is my dollars. I'm not gonna give to something that just it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So the theatrical release is done. Can you do a streaming like on Amazon? Is that something that you guys are thinking about, or?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So the movie will live on, and this is again the benefit of us doing it independently. It's harder, and I think this is true on the film side. I think it's also true on the fiction side, which is a little bit harder to do it with a film because you're having to piece together a lot. Like, it's one thing to put a book up on Amazon and start marketing it. And
you
stuff
can't
like
just
that.
throw a movie up and say, "Here you go."
Exactly, it's a little bit different, but at the same time, we'll have what's called a transactional video on demand release, which is or TVOD for short, which is you buy or rent the film on Amazon or Apple. So that'll happen. It's going to happen. It'll happen before the end of the year. But that's something we're doing ourselves. And then there's other things like a subscription video on demand. So that would be like a Netflix would be considered a subscription video on demand where they have subscribers, right?
I no longer have that.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the funny thing is our film, because it's faith-based, will likely not go onto something like a Netflix because they actually do not have an open door for that kind of stuff.
No,
intentionally so.
They said they're going to, but what they do,
they can say it all day long, but until
so what they're pushing now, I'm like, and I didn't believe it. I looked at some of the things myself. I'm like, all right, well, that crosses another line. It's time I just walk with my. Not that I believe in cancel culture. I don't, but I also don't want to support something that is not good for my family, my granddaughter, my grandson. I'm not gonna do that no matter what they have on there. I'll find another way, Yeah. So for us, we aren't in the platform game. We're not trying to build a platform, but we recognize that, like, there are a bunch of people that are trying to do that, and they need the content. And so that was another reason why we got into this space, is going, we know that there's a desire out there, there's an audience out there, and we want to provide that. We want to try to make that thing or those things. And to be honest with you, kind of going back a little bit to the fact that, Doc Connor's targeted towards 8 to 12-year-olds. You could say it probably leans girls because the girl is, it's a girl protagonist. The film, I think, is accessible. We have had same age range boys love the film just as much because I wrote it, and my wife and I have 4 boys, and so we're very focused on including boys and not making boys feel like they're excluded in things. And so that, we've had a lot of success with that in terms of the response to the film from that age range. But to be honest with you, I feel like that's not the only audience that's being neglected often in Christian media. I mean, I think young men are neglected in Christian media. And to me, I've got I'm looking at it going, can we tell stories there? Can we do books or do films or do TV or what that is targeted towards that? Because that's what we feel is there's a hunger out there. There's a desire out there. Especially now. I think right now is the time, now's the time to strike, because there is a revival for young men to really, they're starting to ask questions. They're starting to go to church and shift back to that traditional, which when you think we talked about earlier about young men just kind of being pushed into the corner and told you're no good. Well, I think that helped them to shift where they are now. That there's more hunger for them, and I think you have a good opportunity to grab the young men as well. I know that's one thing that indie Christian authors do really well is they have really good young men authors. They're fantasy or sci-fi, and I think they just have to find those books.
Yeah.
The same way they'd have to find the movies. And I feel like the boys that enjoyed Doc Connor, they enjoyed it not because there was a boy main character. They enjoyed it because of the content. Like it was a mystery. I don't believe all the stuff that people say, like girls won't watch action movies and boys won't watch movies with women main characters. If it's a good story, believable, they will. They're not giving them what those boys want.
Right.
They like mysteries. They like guns, bombs, and dinosaurs and dragons and swords. Like, give them that stuff and don't make them watch little romances. They're not gonna. That's not who they are.
Well, even with that, one thing I would say, I'm kind of curious what you think about this. I think you'll agree with me, but one of the biggest, one of the most important things that needs to be true about those stories, regardless of the gender of the protagonist, is that the characters behave as they naturally should. Meaning, you don't have a female protagonist that's overly masculine. Because I think that's the turnoff, right? It's like, well, if I have a female protagonist that is no different from a man in terms of how they act and talk and everything, I'm not interested in that because it doesn't ring true, versus having a female protagonist that's actually feminine, and having male protagonists that also are masculine, or having male characters that are also masculine. So
right, exactly.
I think that's what matters
I totally
more,
agree.
or is incredibly important. Honestly, on the film side and on the fiction side, because that's what we see a lot, especially from Hollywood. I mean, that's the thing, right?
Trying to wedge in things that
there's so many great female protagonists in movies that I love, that are even like character like Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite film, and Karen Allen's Marion character in that is awesome. I mean, like she's a strong character, but she's feminine, and she's very feminine, and they don't shy away from that.
She'll knock your teeth out, but
exactly. But it works. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like she's also not taking on all the bad guys herself and doing it better than Indiana Jones is.
You don't have Jennifer Aniston fighting the Rock and win.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a space for that. Women have a lot of strength that men don't. Subtlety is one of them. I agree. There's not a lot of.
I think that's the thing
that shouldn't be there.
And I think that's the thing that current filmmakers and authors and sometimes miss in companies. Hold on, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Is the younger generation, younger men, they pick up on the inauthenticity of those things a lot quicker, and will discard it a lot quicker. And so that I'm thinking a lot about that in terms of, future content and the types of things we're trying to do is how do we reach these groups that are underserved with the media that's going to be biblically solid. And that may be explicit. Doc Connor's explicit in terms of its presentation of biblical ideas. It could be implicit, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of, I think a lot of people respond naturally to our company motto for Huff Media Productions is to tell exciting stories with eternal truths. And eternal truths is the way we talk about those things that are implicit within us that God has put in us because of how He's created us. And so that can be true in a story as well. So I like both. I like it can be explicit, and I like it if it's a well done story. And then it can be implicit as well. And done well, and do something, to bring people close, or to introduce the kingdom principles, kingdom of God principles to them. So,
So you said about a year before you get like video on demand for Doc Connor,
No, so
roughly.
actually, video on demand for Doc Connor, the movie will come out for sale and rental before the end of this year. So only
Oh,
within the
awesome.
next like couple of months. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That'll be
And then
awesome.
it will go uh, for the movie as well. There's church site licensing is kind of big in the faith-based space where a church
Yep.
can license the film to play. So that'll be a part of
That
it.
that's a
But
good idea. Like, 'cause we
yeah,
do movie night uh every probably 4 or 5 months. Don't always do it, but that's good to know that that'll be there. Okay, so end of this year, Doc Connor, video on demand, also church red licensing. Anything else you have coming up? Like
well,
any?
yeah, in terms of like what else we're working on and stuff. Well,
Yeah,
so
that you can share.
There's a Doc Connor middle grade fiction book that's been written.
Okay.
Another author that we've contracted and are working with wrote that book, and we see the Doc Connor brand as moving beyond films and television and being able to do books and apps and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So we're working
Awesome.
on that stuff. Excited about the book because that's another space where I just think in terms of kids content, Christians are
Yeah,
lacking, in having quality middle grade stuff. And
I love it.
um, so we'll do that. But yeah, a lot of conversation with my wife and I about what do we want to approach. I think with Doc Connor in particular, like there likely be a point where we can't do any more, or it wouldn't make sense to do any more live action content with the current cast just because they're getting older and when you're
The
working with
growing
kids.
up and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. They age out
yeah,
eventually. So we're talking about, hey, what's the next thing? And
yeah.
I already mentioned like having this heart for young men and what we might do there. But also just trying to up the game when it comes to Christian entertainment because the other half of our company motto is that exciting stories piece. And I did this with the Shepherd Suspense Series as well, is I actually want it to be entertaining. And
Yeah.
that sounds like it's a knock on like other films and stuff. And I'm not saying there's not a place for like a based on a true story drama or like a movie about a social issue or something like that. Um, that's fine. I mean, there's places for
Yeah.
those kind of movies, but
But there's something about being drawn out of your everyday life.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
The genre stuff you mentioned, the sci-fi or fantasy. Like,
Yep.
yeah, I want to see more of that kind of stuff in the Christian or from a Christian perspective.
Right.
And it's frustrating me so much to watch people talk about the modern day film industry because it's almost like every film that comes out, if it's an original story and it's a genre movie where it's like maybe a thriller or a sci-fi or something, it's always rated R. It's always filled with a bunch of stuff. It's always from a leftist perspective.
Yeah.
It's like almost
Y-
always.
I was watching the Clancy Jack Ryan TV series, and
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I think it was the third season where they just totally flipped, and I'm like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
at the
yeah,
you lose me. I probably won't come back. I'm an old man, and they're not making money off of me anyways.
yeah,
Like they're not. I'm not their target audience, but still,
yeah,
like I can't keep doing this. Like it's silly.
yeah.
I have one
Totally.
question.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you said you were going into ministry.
Hmm.
How long have you been a follower of Christ? Have you
That's a
always
good
been? Did
question.
you
Yeah,
grow up in the church or?
yeah. So my dad was a minister, and I grew up. I grew up heavily involved in church as a result of that, and got saved at the age of 9. And really, I think this is just true for everybody, right? Is you have a conversion experience where you understand the gospel, but then learning what sanctification is, learning about, I'd say I was probably 13 when it really settled into my
Right. Yeah.
brain that like, oh, okay, this is like a life. Like it's not just a one-time decision type thing. And my parents were very as deeply involved and I was homeschooled and Christian curriculum and all that kind of stuff. And as
Yeah.
deeply as involved as we were, my parents were very much like, sort of letting us, you know, not saying you had to do this or else kind of thing.
Kind of finding your way.
Yeah. And so, so I found that to be helpful because, it was, then I was able to be like, okay, go on this journey where I really was kind of the mindset through my teen years of, if I say I'm going to follow Christ, that's what I'm going to do until it proves to not work,
Yep.
And,
until it seems like it's not true.
And to be honest with you, and that's where I've gotten to where I am now, because, and I believe this deeply, that if you truly commit to understanding the scriptures, digging into them, following Christ, trying to live by his example, understand it, engage with God's people, you do all that, you can't exhaust it in terms of, the impact it can have on your life. And so, I would say by the time I'm then hitting my college years and hitting, getting early married and everything, I mean, I'm in, right? In terms of, this is it. This is true and real and everything. With ministry, to be honest with you, and I realize now that the reason God took me that path was very purposeful when it comes to what I do now. Because I worked in local churches for 10 years. I started out doing some creative stuff with a church, but then moved over into youth ministry for a while, and then finished off kind of my time in local church doing some creative ministry.
Yeah.
And coming out on the other side of that, and then getting into leaving ministry and doing more corporate media kind of stuff, and now getting into the filmmaking and author stuff. What I've discovered that was sort of true about, or what was beneficial about the route that I took, is that, ministry is so much about people, so much about helping people, working with people, organizing people. And if I had gone and been a computer animator, in my 20s, I think I would have been hard to work with, because I definitely have this side of me that's so much more interested in the product that's being made, and doing it really, really well, and way less, when I was younger, way less interested in the impact that was going to have on anybody else around me. Right?
Exactly. You were doing your thing.
Yeah. And so I think if I had become a filmmaker in my early 20s, I would have been one of those filmmakers that probably people would have hated working with, because I would have discarded them in favor of doing the thing,
getting the product.
Yeah. And so taking me through ministry, I think the Lord was kind of ironing those rough edges out of saying, hey, that I'm going to use you, and I'm going to use those skill sets you have, but you're going to do it to help people. You're not going to do it ultimately for the end product. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I have that perspective now, and I'm grateful for that time that I spent. And it has ministry has its pros and cons, and we could do a whole podcast on,
absolutely. Yeah.
The cons of ministry.
I feel for my pastor, because he never gets a rest. And this is, we're filming in October, and it's Pastor Appreciation month. We choose just a day, but my message to people is always check on your pastors, because people are always downloading on them.
Yeah.
They've got the weight of everyone, and that's what they're meant to do, but they're also people, and
I think personal opinion about church is not the church at large. And I grew up in Southern Baptist churches, and I think it's very clear there, kind of not doing a great job of sort of that. We were just reading with my family and with my boys in Exodus, where Moses is kind of admonished by his father-in-law that he's taking on too much on himself, right? And he's like, you got to delegate that. You can't those. And I think
you're the last resort.
Right. And I think that's not often, it's difficult to do that. And so I'm not saying churches intentionally have gone that route. It's just more having building up a lot of lay leaders in your church that can be seen as people that the
you
church
can
go to, and not everybody feel like they need the attention of the senior pastor, right?
Yeah.
So
we're a young church, 9 years. So we haven't quite, we have 6 pastors that are pastorals and one that preaches, and like it's tough to have that, that have people go to them instead of the lead pastor, because everybody wants to talk to the lead pastor. So before we go, can I pray for you before we go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Heavenly Father, we lift up Andrew. We want to lift up his wife. And we pray that you would use him, use them, and influence not just the Christian space, but the general space, that you will bring to them the resources that they need, whether that's people, time, whatever it is, stories, that they can turn in for the betterment of you. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Before we go, what is the best way for people to help you out? Buy the books, obviously, because you can still get the books, and hopefully that money still goes to you. Is there anything else that they can do?
Yeah, so andrewhuffbooks.com is where you can get the Shepherd Suspense Series, or just read, you can get a sample and find where you can buy that and stuff. And that would be great to do that. And then huffmediapro.com is our production company. That's also Huff Media Pro is all of our handles on social media, so you can follow us on those different places.
I'll make sure.
And then DocConnor.com is where people can go to find information about Doc Connor specifically. At Webtective is all of the social handles for that. But what I would say is the biggest thing for indie filmmakers and indie authors, and I think this is probably true for you too, is so much of what we do is in the business is so dependent upon platform, and that's essentially fans wherever you are, if it's on Instagram or Facebook, or even if it's just YouTube, finding and following the people that you like.
I agree.
And it's probably a lot of people are like me. I mean, honestly, if I wasn't doing this business, I'd probably not be on the internet much.
I agree. Yeah.
So I get it. I get the pain of that a little bit. But it is helpful for us in terms of audience. If this is the type of stuff you're looking for, it's not just us, it's Don. It's so many of the authors that you're going to have on here is going and following.
Leaving reviews, everything you can. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because it's all about audience. It's about the content reaching the audience. So.
It is. And I think now's the time. Like I truly feel that there's movement where if we can get young men to take interest in the work that you and I are doing and others, like it can have a impact on our society. So
yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. God bless.
Thanks.